lend to small businesses and homeowners, you just might not increase your profits quarter over quarter by quite as much as you increased them last year. But I think most Americans would agree that that's a fair trade-off for society. More small business lending, more first-time home buyers, less chance of taxpayer bank bailouts. In exchange, maybe smaller executive bonuses and a teeny tiny bit less profit for multi-trillion-dollar Wall Street banks. We know the banking industry doesn't give up without a well-funded fight. Wall Street pours money into high-priced lobbyists to fight any effort to put the most basic guard rules on your ability to do whatever you want. What your banks want is to maximize quarterly profits. We understand that. The cost of everything and everyone else be damned. We've seen over and over what a problem that is and the harm that the current system does in places like Ohio. Earlier this year, when I first heard about SVB's collapse, my mind immediately went to another crisis in my state in East Palestine, Ohio, the place where the train derailment happened and affected dramatically a community in my state. They have one thing in common. Corporate lobbyists for years push for weaker rules, less oversight. Companies cut costs. They don't care about safety if it gets in the way of increasing profits. Working people always working people pay the price. That's why people hate Wall Street. That's why people hate Washington, because these lobbying campaigns that you've engaged in usually work. We see it over and over. We saw it during the fight to pass Dodd-Frank after the financial crisis. Many of us remember the quote from an industry lobbyist after the president signed Dodd-Frank. Now it's halftime. This time Wall Street was true to its word. The executives whose banks failed this spring had lobbied for watered-down rules to make it easier to chase profits at all costs. They knew risks were building at their banks, but they chose to ignore those risks because it meant a bigger payout for executives at the top. So we should be concerned when the executives of even bigger banks are doing the same thing against capital requirements. Working Americans are tired of arrogant executives gambling with other people's money, then riding off in the sunset without any consequences. That's why we need to pass the Bipartisan Recoup Act. Thank you, Senator Scott, for your work on that, to hold failed bank executives accountable for driving their banks into the ground. It's why we need strong capital rules.